Got an interesting question from our buddy Programmer Guy 88. I think that's what it was. He wants to know, how is it that he can't finish books? He wants to learn. There are a couple books that he's really interested in. He says that he's interested in. And he starts reading it and he can't get through it. He's got a list of books that are half finished or whatever the case may be. How is it that Elliot perhaps can get through books? Well, the fact is Elliot does not get through every single book that he reads. What you've got to do is you've got to approach your education, right? Because that's really what it is. That's the way I see it. See, I don't read for pleasure. Right? Like my wife and I are funny because we both sit and read in the evening time. And I'm reading like stuff about neuroplasticity and she's reading like 50 Shades of Grey, right? So she gets through books quickly and I'm like scratching my head while I'm reading because I read with a purpose. When I'm reading a book, I have to feel as if there is something I can extract from this book. I'm not reading it just because, in fact, I'm a slow reader. I'm not a good reader, but I'm reading with a purpose. I am in such a state when I'm reading these books that the words are literally becoming a part of my physiology. I'm absorbing them. And some books, the way they're written by some authors, are more easily absorbed by my consciousness than other books. And I will know within a matter of chapters if this book is being absorbed into my consciousness or not. And it has to do with a lot of different factors. One being the way the author presents the ideas. Okay, so you can't blame yourself. One of the books he wants to read is the Communist Manifesto, right? So I've never read that by Karl Marx, but I'm assuming that it is like a deep philosophical discourse that's probably like racks your brain as you're reading it. And it may not be pleasurable. Learning has to be done in a state of pleasure. You guys should write that shit down. Learning needs to be done in a state of pleasure because pleasure softens the body, it softens the mind, and it allows in, right? Right? Learning is a yin behavior. It's a vagina behavior. You've got to soften just like the vagina so that you can receive the potency of the books that you're reading or what you're learning. You've got to soften. You've got to breathe so that you can literally absorb the words into your consciousness. If you have to attack the reading and such that it causes you to grow tired or uncomfortable, that means you shouldn't be reading that. It's just the way we're all very different. So I can read Ralph Waldo Emerson, right? And most people read Ralph Waldo Emerson and they're like, what the fuck is this guy saying? Because he talks in circles and there's like so much going on and it's written in like old American English. Like nobody talks like that anymore. But for some reason, I can soften to his words. I think because they're so dense that I literally have to go into a meditative state in order to read him. I can't read Emerson when I'm like anxious. I have to read Emerson when I'm soft, when it's like I'm kicking back, I'm relaxing, and I'm just like, right? I like reading Alexander Lowen. A lot of people can't stand Alexander Lowen because he's a scientist. I mean, the guy was a medical doctor, had so many medical doctor degrees, and he was a genius, but he writes like a poet, right? So it's all the scientific shit, but he writes it so poetically. And I love it because I enjoy poetry, if you can figure it out. So when I read it, I can lay back and absorb. Some people are just different. They like very direct words. Like, I can't read too many books that are just very like, if I see numbers on a page, like if there are statistics on a fucking page, I'm like my eyes just like glaze over. I just can't read it. Some people, they really delve into it. I guess they're more active learners. They really delve into it. They see numbers and they're like calculating and shit, and it's like all happening inside them. We're all very different. It's not right or wrong. So my invitation is to first figure out what kind of learner are you, right? What kind of authors can you learn from? If you're reading Marx and you can't finish the book, then don't read Marx. But guess what? There are tens of thousands of other authors that may have read Marx and then represented his words in such a way that you can absorb it. Don't feel guilty. See, a lot of times when we're trying to learn, when we're studying, when we're reading books, we're doing it in a very narcissistic way. We want to prove that I can read this. Prove that I read this. Fuck that. You can't be narcissistic about learning. Learning, again, has to be a softening of the mind. Even if you're an active learner, like a number person, you have to actually open up. There's a part of you that needs to open up to allow that stuff in. And that way you can actually, instead of just being engaged in the activity of reading, you are actually learning. You know, a lot of people want to know, how is it that I learn so much? Well, it's not because I do read a lot, but it's not because I read a lot. It's because I absorb a lot. And you want to get yourself into that state of mind. I think a really good course for you to study would be Accelerated Learning Techniques by Brian Tracy. And he talks a lot about this, all about the psychology of learning, right? I haven't listened to that in years, but I think there's a lot of good stuff in it. So that's it, dude. It's how you approach your studies, and it's finding the right teachers who present the material in a way that's resourceful to you. Good luck.